Let's talk about a company so massive, so influential, that when it makes a move, it can actually signal a major shift in how global business is done. And this is the story of how one of those titans, Allianz, decided to completely remodel one of its biggest assets, its own offices. So imagine this. You're managing over 2 trillion. That's trillion with a T, dollars in assets for people all around the world. Your biggest worries must be in the financial markets, right? But what happens? What happens when the very buildings you work out of every day are actually holding you back? They're inefficient, they're costing you a fortune, and they're getting in the way of your own big corporate promises. Well, that's the exact spot Alliance was in, and what they did about it is a really fascinating case study for any modern company. All right, so to really get why this was such a huge deal for them, you first have to understand the sheer scale we're talking about here. Let's set the stage and look at this Titan's modern-day challenge. Let's be clear, this is a company at the absolute top of its game. You're looking at business volume nearing $200 billion, with profits that are bigger than the GDP of some countries. They are a true financial juggernaut. But, even juggernauts have problems they need to solve. And here was their core problem, this kind of two-headed monster. On one side, you've got this huge, sprawling portfolio of old office buildings that are just inefficient and expensive to run. On the other side, you've made this very loud, very public promise to slash your carbon footprint. The thing is, you really can't fix one of these without fixing the other. So how'd they tackle it? Okay, so this brings us to the heart of the story. Alliance didn't just, tinker around the edges or paint a few walls. Nope. They launched this really clear 3-part strategy to completely transform how they thought about and used their physical workspaces. You can basically think of it as their new work playbook. It's 3 simple steps. First, consolidate. Second, digitize. And third, right-size. Now, each one of those words represents a massive, massive undertaking. So let's break down each move one by one. So first up, they stopped spreading themselves so thin. Instead of having dozens and dozens of smaller, older, scattered offices, they started bringing their teams together into these big, high-quality prime hubs. The best example is their Stuttgart campus, where they literally took people from multiple locations all over the city and brought them all under one roof in a new state-of-the-art facility. And this wasn't just about saving a few bucks on rent. The real strategy here, the big idea, was all about culture. They even gave it a name, the power of unity. The thinking was, if you bring people together in these really impressive new spaces, you're going to foster better collaboration, and you'll create a place where the best and brightest actually want to come work. Okay, move number 2, digitization. They didn't just build new offices, they made them smart. They rolled out this thing called the Building Signature Program, and through it, they took 130 of their most valuable properties and packed them with AI and smart sensors to manage everything from the lights to the air conditioning in real time. And here's where it all clicks back to those big climate goals. See, you can't just say you're going to reduce your carbon footprint. You have to be able to measure it really precisely. And this program gave them that super detailed, granular data they absolutely needed to have any chance of hitting that ambitious 25% reduction target. And wow, did it pay off. The results were immediate, and they were dramatic. On average, these new smart buildings use 20% less energy. That is a massive saving that's good for the planet and, you better believe, good for the bottom line. And the final piece of the puzzle was just facing reality. Hybrid work is here, and it's not going anywhere. So with their new ways of working policy, which guarantees everyone at least 40% remote work, they just didn't need a desk for every single employee every single day anymore. I mean, just look at their Guildford office in the UK. They cut the capacity from 1,500 people down to just 600. That's a huge change. So the really key thing here is that this wasn't a guess. This was a decision driven by data. They looked at how their employees were actually working and aligned their real estate to match. So what happened? Well, they slashed their overhead costs and, at the same time, gave their employees the flexibility they were asking for. It's a total win-win. So that's the 3-part strategy, right? Consolidate, digitize, and right-size. But did it actually work? Let's take a look at the hard data and see for ourselves. Honestly, the numbers here pretty much speak for themselves. Their expense ratio improved, which points to some serious productivity gains. They were able to sell off over $300 million in older properties, which freed up cash to reinvest in those prime hubs. And they even automated most of the remote work request process, just making life easier for everybody. And what about that big climate promise? That huge ESG goal? Well, take a look. They are this close to hitting their 25% carbon reduction target for 2025. This is the clearest proof you can get that the strategy is really delivering. But it's not all just about the dollars and the emissions. What about the people? Their own internal survey, the Work Well Index, which basically measures how happy employees are, it shot up to 71%. So this proves the changes weren't just good for the company's balance sheet, they were good for the employees too. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, it seems pretty clear that Allianz has created a powerful blueprint for how a legacy giant can really transform itself for the modern era. But their choices also bring up some really important questions about the future of work. And so this is the question I really want to leave you with. By betting so big on these giant centralized prime hubs, is Allianz actually building the innovative, culture-rich workplace of the future? Or does putting all your eggs in a few very expensive baskets create a whole new kind of risk? In an age where everyone is talking about flexibility and being agile, does this model maybe lock them into a strategy that could be hard to pivot away from down the road? It's a fascinating question, and you can bet that a lot of other companies are watching very, very closely to see how it all plays out.